A lot of moms call me and they say, my kid has no motivation. I can't even relate to that. I don't even know what that means. How do you get a kid to be motivated? And this is part of the answer is working with and being flexible with internal and external, working on external rewards. But still the principle that you and I would probably agree to is still you have to earn it. You do have to do the work. You do have to take the action steps.
Welcome to Real Talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches, where we discuss all aspects of parenting using the foundation of understanding personality dynamics to raise independent, responsible, and resilient children. My name is Karen Wagner, founder of Teaching Our Youth and the Parenting Blueprint. Let's dig right in with today's topic and have some real talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches. Well, welcome back to Real Talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches, where we're going to dive into real challenges of parenting, but also provide you the strategies that actually work. Today's episode is for parents who may have felt that kind of tug of war between wanting to serve and help their kids, but also knowing that too much help might actually be holding them back. We're talking about enabling those moments where we love, we want to protect them, but we are unintentionally stopping our kids from growing into the confident, capable adults. We're going to take a step further into looking at how understanding your child's personality, in other words, how they're wired by nature, can make a huge difference, especially when we're working with neurodiverse kids. I am so excited to welcome back Parenting Blueprint Coach and neurodiverse coach, Jared Kallen, to the show. Jared, we did an episode not too long ago that got a lot of views, so I am so excited to have you back to take our listeners a little deeper into understanding how they can best work with their kids. So you work with neurodiverse students and their families to help them, as we talked about earlier, rewrite those limiting narratives, okay? The things that get stuck in our head, those beliefs that we have, to help them build more self-confidence and take ownership of their growth. And we're going to explore ways of how parents can stop rescuing, it's the helicopter parenting, and really start empowering. And so, Jared, I want to start off with the hard truth. And you've seen this in probably a lot of the kids that you work with, but they can cling to these negative narratives like I'm dumb or I can't do this. And how do these self-limiting beliefs stick? And where are they showing up in their life? And let's take that a little step further and how these narratives impact the neurodiverse kids differently or at all, differently than just a typical child. So I know you've seen a lot of this in your clients, but let's kind of dig a little bit deeper into those negative.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, Karen, thanks for having me for a second time. I appreciate what you do. The main thing is that what you just brought up is a very complex topic because it sort of has multi angles to it. So a kid could use something that they've been told to excuse themselves from an activity that they could actually do on their own. Like say, like if they were called, even if it was 4 years ago, an idiot, incapable, retarded, all these awful words, right? Then sometimes you just have a negative effect. The kid believes it, then he doesn't perform. That's one scenario. But another scenario that I see often is that these kids, especially neurodivergent kids, they're very smart generally. They have a high IQ. They don't always have a high EQ, but they always have a high IQ, or not always, but often, right? Especially twice exceptional. So basically, what some of these youngsters do is that when it's convenient to trot that out, oh, well, what do you expect? I'm dumb. I was told I was dumb. I'm an idiot. I'm incapable. I'm incompetent, right? But the problem is that they're using it right at the point when they could be doing something, an activity that I might have asked them to do. And that they already know how to do it because it was modeled for them. So for them to start to sort of run away a little bit from proactivity or activity or actually doing something for themselves that they have already been coached on. So they can't say, oh, I don't know how to do it, right? They do know. But they're still saying, well, what do you expect? So that's sort of, one aspect of, sort of making excuses or underperforming almost, whether it's intentional or unintentional, they're underperforming when they need not be underperforming. They don't need to do that.
So having worked with students so long in this area,
yeah,
I'm going to take this back another layer. Why do you think that sticks? Because, like you said, they're right on the cusp, being able to do something that they maybe believe they can't or haven't, and that negative narrative comes back, and they're not willing to dip their toe in the pool, so to speak, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, what do you think is that barrier? Because I think this is the surface stuff, but we need to get to really the root of why they're
Yeah.
still feeling that, even though we're encouraging them, we got them there, we've given them the
Yeah.
steps, and they're still resistant.
Yeah. Well, the root of the problem that you just identified is directly related to the average profile of a neurodivergent person. Which what I mean by that is that they only do what they want to do and what they're interested in. And so, if you have a situation where, let's say, I'm trying to coach executive functioning, things that they might consider boring, like scheduling, planning, prioritizing, self-advocating, clearly with teachers or professors, that to them, that's boring, almost definitely. Right. And so then, because of who they are and how they're wired, to use a word you use a lot, then they can say, well, they can go back to sort of the false narratives, or narratives that are not helpful, don't serve them well. But really, what they're actually saying is, I don't care about executive functioning. I don't care. You know, what's the point? And then that can take on lots of shapes. Like they could layer that with, and besides, I'm a ninth and 10th grader. I do not intend to go to college. I'm gonna, all this kind of stuff. So whatever, this might be okay for somebody who's a more serious student, Jared, or something, but I'm not going to college, so I really don't know why we're talking. Something like that. A little bit dominant, a little bit in your face sort of thing. And then it's my job or your job to say, well, I hear what you're saying. I never say anything about college. We're talking about like today, and the fact that you don't know how to write a clear email to your teacher to figure out why you don't have credit for X homework or Y homework, or why some homework is showing is missing when you handed it in, and you just found the proof, or that you can't find the proof that you did the homework, and so now you're sort of screwed. Like, there's a lot of things going on an executive function level that aren't getting done. But it's not because they can't do it. To your point, there's other things going on that they prefer to be doing. And this has been documented with all the data, lots of research. Dr. Barkley, who's famous at, Mr. ADHD, if they don't want to do it, they're not doing it unless you find a way to get them to do it, whether it's incentivizing, de-incentivizing, family contracts, rewards, consequences, all the stuff you've talked about with your wonderful son, Kyle. It all comes into play.
Yeah. He was definitely the one that was only going to do what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. So I can totally relate to that and how maddening it was. And even with Kyle, because he was a gamer,
Yeah.
I had to try and put it into, you can't get to the next level until you find all the stuff on this level, and you've got to accomplish this level before you can get to that level, because he would just want to do the things that he wanted to do, but not master everything. And that was, of course, more prevalent in school, because there were only subjects that he was interested in doing and didn't care about others, but you need to pass them all in high school, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then
Right.
when we got to college, where he went to community college, and we were just trying to get him an associate's degree in, I think we were looking at robotics, because he was very mechanically inclined, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just get that, but you still had to take, even in associates, general ed classes that he didn't care about. So it was like tap out. It wasn't going to work, and he needed to find another way. So
Right.
it really is. So I can totally relate to when a child wants to do something. So then I always get back to, we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make him drink,
Mm-hmm.
but we
Yeah.
can salt the oats. How do we salt the oats, right? How do we try to influence or encourage them to take those steps to see that they do have what it takes to achieve by some level of incentive? And so have you had
Yeah.
to kind of play that game?
Absolutely.
I mean,
All this every day.
reverse
Every day.
psychology, right? Have you had to do that as well?
Every day, all the time, every client, well, most clients, because there's a big divide between the way, the sort of ethos, and the environment, the ecosystem with which you and I grew up, when we were kids 45 years ago, 50 years ago, and now. And the divide is that most people, not all, but most, are not nearly as internally rewarded as we were. So if I worked hard in high school and came home with an A, I felt good about myself and about my efforts. And I might have felt even better if my dad said "great job" or something. But that was sort of how I grew up. And what I see a lot these days, not all the time, but a lot, is that is not that's not there anymore. It's sort of disappeared or really diminished, and that's where, to your point, some sort of reward or system or incentive versus de-incentive can play a really large part, because if you're a parent and you know that like the kid's room is a mess. This comes up all the time. The bedroom's a mess. It smells. I've told him a million times to clean it. We can't get it cleaned. Then a logical response might be, well, what does he really like, or what does he really want? What would make him like light up? And it could be anything. It could be a small game. It could be 4 cheeseburgers on a Friday night at, whatever that place is called, Five Guys, or their favorite chocolate, or something a little bigger. It all depends on the family and what they're used to doing. And that's why everything's got to be customized and tailored, because, I've had some families, they're able to fly their kid to Sweden, and then, yeah. And then I've had some families that are like, yeah, he's going to maybe get like a Snickers and that's it. And both are fine. It all depends on the scenario. But the difference between, this issue, internal and external. See, a lot of moms call me and they say, my kid has no motivation. I can't even relate to that. I don't even know what that means. How do you get a kid to be motivated? And this is part of the answer, is working with and being flexible with internal and external, working on external rewards. But still, the principle that you and I would probably agree to is still, you have to earn it. You do have to do the work. You do have to take the action steps. You do have to be proactive. You can't do half of what I asked you to do over the course of a week and expect to have the 3 cheeseburgers. That doesn't make sense. And then what I tell the families is, you take it like week to week or even less time, because another thing we know about neurodivergence is that they have time blindness. So if you said to your average neurodivergent person, oh, if you do really well with Jared over the next 3 months, then you're going to get X. They and Dr. Barkley will support this. They don't even hear it. 3 months, it's out of their mind. But if you say, tomorrow night, if you do really well on this test coming up in biology, right, I'm taking you out to wherever, Chipotle, Five Guys, whatever. They hear it. Yeah. They hear it because it's coming up, and this is all documented. You cannot. And that's a huge difference between neurodivergence and neurotypical. Neurotypical you write it on the calendar. Oh, Sweden, 3 months, great. Do a good job with Jared. But now with the typical neurodivergent, because of the time blindness, you have to say, yo, dude, if you do this, whatever this is, study for your Spanish quiz, prepare for your Great Gatsby English exam, read Catcher in the Rye, go act out Hamlet because you're doing a little, simulation later in school. If you do it, you get the Snickers bar tomorrow night at 8. Like everything's got to be sort of, laid out.
Yes. Yeah.
It's got to be laid out.
And in the Parenting Blueprint course, we talk about the inspiring personality, which is very fast-paced, active, mindset, and focuses more on people than tasks. One of our strategies is short-term goals with rewards. It's got to be a short-term goal to get the reward. Now, I am not a total proponent of rewards, because I find that now we got to keep upping the ante. What we are trying to do is get the child addicted to what you called the internal reward, the feel-good feeling that I accomplished, and let it go. They let them feel that themselves, and just say that's got to feel good to have accomplished that, and just let it go. Not make big hullabaloo, issues out of it, because now it becomes about that instead of what they feel inside of themselves, because they did what it took to succeed and not feel that. So many times parents, when they're stepping in,
but let me just jump in for one second. What you said makes a lot of sense. But what we're talking about, at least initially, is external rewards to a certain extent, just to get the person moving.
Absolutely.
And to your point, success breeds success.
Yes.
So if they have a little success, it will snowball in the right direction, unless there's something else going on.
Yes, exactly. And so to use those little, what I call the little tickies, the little ticket there,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get them. But the
yeah.
whole thing in getting the reward is also, like you're saying, the internal reward of the pride that they feel when they've accomplished something. And not
Hmm.
because we did it for them, is because we coached and encouraged them. But again, they needed to do the work. And many times I've seen with parents in the coaching that I have done, that they feel like they're helping when they're stepping in, but really, how is that truly holding them back? And let's get real, let's get real and raw with parents here, because I know that's what they think they're doing. They're helping them, they're overwhelmed, and we have to be conscious of their mental health, and then we're accommodating, right? And
Hmm.
then there are common ways that we see parents either overcorrecting,
Hmm.
trying to control it, or rescuing, and
Hmm.
they're not even realizing that they're doing it, and it's holding the kids back. So what are some of the common things that you see in parents who are working with neurodiverse, because I'm sure they feel as though they're trying to help them
Yeah.
rather than let them
Yeah.
do it on their own? So what are some of the examples, because there are maybe some of our listeners can
Yeah,
connect with some.
yeah, there are a lot of examples where the parents that are very well intentioned. Let's get that right on the table.
Right.
Very well intentioned, and they love their kids. And partly because of that, they're becoming their kids' executive functioning center.
Mhm.
And now we have a problem because then, to your point, why would a kid try at something that he either doesn't want to do or doesn't know how to do or finds difficult
Right.
if mom is right there or dad's right there? Say, oh, here it is. So. And this extends to all sorts of executive functioning tasks. This extends. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I started with a kid. First session we're on FaceTime, and I said, can you get on your Gmail? We're going to go do some writing on Google Docs. And then the next thing I see is mom running up the stairs and looking up on her phone or something what his Gmail password is. Now we have an executive functioning breakdown. Okay. And then when she leaves, I might say, if I'm being, with it as a good coach that day, can you figure out how to remember your password? Do you know where to store it? And that's an executive functioning task
Yes.
that the mom just sort of took away from him.
Right.
Part of what parents do, and to your point about let's get real and let's get, no BS express,
Mhm.
is we're taking agency. Parents are taking agency from their kids on a consistent basis sometimes, but just for a lot, again, well intentioned, but it's not, doesn't work out well, right? Like it's like even a kid I know very well, and I travel with him a lot and stuff for sports and coach. And we were going, I think we had to fly somewhere, and he had to have a social security number. They had, so I said, what's your social security number? First reaction is, I'll call mom.
Mhm.
Okay. Where we're in a line lining up to, there's 20 guys trying to get on a flight to go to a game that I'm coaching, right? And he's like, I got to call mom. So now we have a problem. It's like, and what I'm thinking is what you're thinking, like, really? Like, I knew that when I was 7, like, 176-542-507. No one, that's, don't tell the IRS, but you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so, and that happens a lot. I'll call mom. I'll call mom. I'll call mom. Like, no, don't call mom.
Right.
You know, can you, and this happens with all sorts of things. Like a big thing that comes up all the time is taking meds. The kids can never, quote, remember, or they forget, quote unquote, to take their meds. But even when I get reports that the mom is at 8 a.m. every day saying, here's the pill, take it. Sometimes it doesn't get taken for some reason. It's a little bit weird. And then sometimes the kids will say, well, I didn't feel like it then, but I put it in in my pocket and I took it on my way to school, but it's not just that, it's waking up in the morning. A lot of kids don't wake up in the morning by themselves. There's no agency there. And then if they tell me that, I say, well, what's you to describe exactly what the situation is. Okay, first of all, you probably went to sleep at 2 or 3 a.m. So you're really short on sleep. So you're probably sleeping through the alarms, right? They say yes. I said, well, then we need to get louder alarms, or we need to get more alarms, like 3 more, and spread them all across your room. So you have to get out of bed to turn them off, and then don't go back to bed, right? Instead of having mom knocking on the door saying, yo, Julian, we're late. Your sister's going to be late too. I'm going to be late for work. Complete disruption. We want to avoid it. So the executive functioning task right there is you go get yourself 3 alarms or order them on Amazon. They're really cheap. Set them, put them on the loudest they can, spread them around your room, and then make sure that once you get out of bed, you don't get back into bed.
Yeah.
And on and on and on about, like there are so many times when you're coaching a neurodivergent of any size, age, ability, whatever, where they say things like, I think.
Yeah.
Whenever they say, I think, I say, what do you mean you think? If this is a yes or no thing, you know, and that means that they didn't check the student portal. And so they're thinking, the therapists call that hanging on hope. Like, I sort of think I think the quiz is Thursday. And that's when I say check right now and then show me, give me, and this gets into the need for trusting and verifying, which many parents don't always do naturally, although we want to coach them to, because it doesn't do very well if they get a good hour from me once per week. And there's hundreds of hours per week. And then nothing's being, monitored during the week by the parents who are seeing them in and out all the time, bedtime, waking up, napping, whatever. They have to be more involved than they sometimes want to be, because wait a minute, I'm paying you, this is your thing, but that, it takes a village.
And as you're saying that in teaching the child, and I call that teaching them the discipline, right? To have the multiple alarms and not get back into bed when you want to, because discipline is a discipline of self-discipline. Even though you want to, you've got to discipline yourself to not get up, go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, whatever it's got to do, get out of the room and do the things. Because if not, and then, like you said, relying on the parent to be the one who is pushing them to get things done that they know they're capable of doing. And as long as parents keep doing it, they'll keep allowing it. I mean, right? I mean, that's with any parent, you know what I mean? As long as you keep doing the laundry, as long as you keep enabling, as long as you keep making excuses for them, they will accept that. They will accept that. Nothing's going to change. So, I really appreciate how you say that there are things that parents can do and we think we're helping them, when we have to get to the point where even if we have to let them fail on that and then go back to the problem solving, which is the strategies that you put up. What did we decide we were going to do? Is that working? If it's not working, what can you do differently in the future? Not, or even what can we do differently? I always like to let my kids know I got your back. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to enable you to continue the things that you need to be doing on your own. So we talk about
I'm sorry, that is a very important point, because what I always tell parents and people and kids is that the most important word in English language is try, TRY.
Yeah. So
it's so different. It doesn't matter what the task is: laundry, doing the dishes, taking the trash out, whatever, separating regular trash from recycling. When a lot of times neurodivergents will say, like, I don't know how to do this or whatever. And the first thing that most parents probably should be doing is assessing, did they try? Did they even try? And then if they didn't try, then the parent could say, please try first. Then if after trying, they don't know, then absolutely, to your point, you're not abandoning them. The kid, and no one's advocating that at all. Then the parent says, let me show you.
Exactly.
Let me show you.
Yeah.
You put the,
or even asking, what do you think what do you think would be the first thing we should do?
You could do that too. Yeah.
And I've had to do that with my kids when they would just get overwhelmed with, like you said, a big task and taking it down to smaller tasks. What do you think is the first thing we need to do? And if they're not sure, then you can say, as we talked earlier before we went live, is, can I make a suggestion? I would probably do this first because of X, Y, Z. What do you think? Or is there something else you think you need to do first? And just having that communication and collaboration where we're not always telling them what to do. Now, look, my personality wants to get it done quickly. And so I didn't always feel as though I had the patience. Like, I had to learn that, Jerry. I had to discipline me to not step in and just do it for them, because I got places to go and things to do, right? So that's why what you're doing right now in coaching the student, but then coaching the parents with the parenting blueprint, is for them to understand why they are parenting the way they're parenting, right? Because that's driving their parenting style. And because we got place to go, I don't want to let them fail, or I don't want them to feel the pain, or I don't want them to be disappointed or feel different than the other kids, and that's not helping them. We are all different. We we are all unique. We are going to approach things in a different way, but it's how
Hmm.
we, what I call, coach and prune them. You know what I mean? Because if we
Hmm.
don't prune or discipline, they are going
Hmm.
to grow wild, and there's no fruit out there. Nothing positive is going to come from that. But it's the
Hmm.
discipline and the pruning that helps them become stronger in their design. And that's where we get back to the understanding of that child's personality. So whether they're dominant or inspiring or supportive and cautious, we need to help parents know when to step in and when to step back. Now,
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you can give an example of a strategy that worked with a neurodiverse child in their family that had a particular personality style where the parent knew when to step in and when to step out. I mean, are you finding that parents have a difficult time stepping out, that maybe we need to talk more about that? Or do you have an
Yeah.
example of that strategy?
But well, a lot of parents do have a problem with stepping out, and they often, like we were talking about just before we came on, they often have certain written or unwritten rules of the family that they don't want to trespass, and so whatever we might be suggesting, you or me or anyone, in a coaching capacity or whatever, it may not be according to their family rules, but who cares? Because whatever they've been doing up till now is they're living up to, as we talked about, the definition of insanity. You don't want to keep doing the same thing and somehow magically hang on hope and expect something to change. So like I have one mother, a while ago, who kept emailing her son. He was a senior. He's about to go to college, and she kept emailing him things that at first seemed really good, like and maybe should work, like Jim, please CC me on all emails to Jared. I want complete visibility of this entire situation, this entire process. I want to know deadlines as it relates to college admissions, et cetera. I want it all. I want to see it all. Okay. But what I realized is that she sees me on all these emails, so they're coming over to me and to the kid, and then I'm seeing no responses. And then when I talk to the kid, he's like, "Yeah, I get email all the time from my mom. It's usually dumb stuff, and I don't respond. It's a waste of my time, or something like that." And then my job is to go back to the mom and say, like, it's not working. I assumed he was responding to you, just not CCing me. It turns out he's not even responding.
At all.
You're not, so let's change it right away. Let's figure out something else, or, sometimes, you know, a, a, a family contract is required, that has concrete's important, rewards or lack of rewards, and it should be a short list, a to-do list. It could be simple as text Jared every day with what you have to do for the very next day. Don't miss a session with Jared, and then add on a few things customized to your family, like chores that kid is responsible for, or something else. Maybe some other engagement. Or regular, some regular things that are expectations within that family, and then you post it. And what seems to work the best is that if you post it, and everyone signs it, and I get a copy of it, now we have a little bit of leverage, and it's good leverage, right? So now when the kid does whatever that is not according to this little mini family contract, like he mouths off his mom or doesn't take the trash out or whatever, and then wonders why he's not getting the 3 cheeseburgers on Friday. All the mom should have to do, or I, or both of us, is point literally to the contract and say it didn't get done. So no cheeseburgers, but you can get them next week.
Right.
Let's
We
go.
got another chance at it. And
Yeah.
you know what? We would do the same thing with our family meetings. Like we would have family rules, there were curfews, there was phone, there were just the
Hmm.
chores, like all the things. Like I gave my kids a window to get the chores done. It could be by 5 o'clock on Saturday because Eric would have football Friday night and have to do film Saturday morning. Then he had his job. So I gave him some flexibility. But if it wasn't done by then there was the consequence kicked in. But we already discussed, as you're talking about your contract, if this is not done, what do you think the consequence should be? And they collaborated on it. So they already knew what was coming. There was no blindsiding. We didn't have to get creative with all these
Right.
different
Right.
consequences because we had already discussed it in advance.
And
And
there's
so if they
also
violated the curfew on when the,
right.
the phone got plugged in at night, the next morning is they handed it over 30 minutes earlier because that was the consequence. You lost it 30 minutes earlier, it goes on earlier, goes in. So, but we had already talked about that. And that takes away the conflict. And the
That's
child
right.
already knows in advance of what's happening. And so there are definitely some things that we can do in really guiding, I couldn't tell Kyle what to do. He was definitely one of those. He was going to do what he wanted when he wanted. But my other kids who were more reserved, I did need to coach them more. I
Mhm.
did need to support them more. I needed to hold them accountable more, but they were a different personality. So I needed
Mhm.
to take a different approach to that. And for instance, when Anna was in high school, she was in a middle college. So although she was only 16, she was on Eastern Michigan's campus taking
Mhm.
college classes that were high school class requirements,
Mhm.
but at the college level.
Right. Right.
One of the requirements was she needed to meet with her professors every semester. She's a little tiny, supportive, reserved girl who had to go to see her professor. The fear and anxiety of just the thought of having to go into a professor's office was
Mhm.
overwhelming to her, but
Mhm.
it was required. So, what
Right.
I did, I didn't go with her. Well, I did go with her. I went to campus with her and I sat on the bench outside the building. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I sat there and I pep talked her. Look, they're human. They're just like me. They're good people. They got families. Like, they want to help
Yep.
you. But it was
Yep.
the overwhelming thought of this professor, this big person on a pedestal, and
Mhm.
she's this little peon 16-year-old high schooler. But
Yeah.
once she got in and realized it was okay, I didn't have to go. I didn't have to do it again. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Right.
she got it. She got it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because,
Right.
but we had to take them to that point of the ledge and then push.
Yeah. Right.
And let them go. And so understanding what their personality is and how can I support them to believe that they have what it takes to succeed, but not do it for them. Right. And Eric was a similar thing, being reserved, and he was struggling with his math class and being an athlete. If you're not carrying a certain GPA,
Yeah.
you're suiting, but you're not playing. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
No kid wants
That's
to
right.
suit and not play. So
That's right.
I was asking him about this certain class that he was having trouble with. And I said, when do they have office hours? When can you get some help? And Jared, he gave me, and I'm sure you've heard it all, the lamest excuses why he
Yeah.
couldn't get help. And I'm sitting here in my mind thinking, you're kidding me with this. Like,
Right.
it was that bad. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but I just kept pushing and trying to overcome his objections. And then he finally just blurted out, I just can't do it. And I said, you can't do what? And he said, I just can't do it. And I'm like, do what? And he said, I just can't ask for help. There
Mhm.
it was. The crack
Yeah.
of the
There it
whip,
was.
right?
Yeah.
So now I knew it was him with his personality feeling as though he didn't want anyone to know that he wasn't getting it. And he was embarrassed that he wasn't getting it. Like, there's
Right.
always a root to the behavior. So
Yeah.
I was empathetic that it's hard to ask for help and shared that it's
Yeah.
hard for me to ask for help,
Yeah.
but this is not helping you. And
Well,
if a teacher
yeah.
wants to help you, they can't help you if they don't know you need help. All
To
it
your
looks like to them is that you don't care.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Well, to your point, what you just brought up right there, asking for help, that is the number one thing that comes up in every session or with every neurodivergent person.
Yes.
They view it as a weakness,
Yep.
or to your point, are a little uncomfortable with it or something, and so they'll avoid it at all costs.
They
And
do.
so
Yeah.
so then it's the parents or coach's job to model and to sort of explain that we all have to ask for help.
Yep.
Uh, however, whatever example you use will work. I need help for my body. I'm diabetic, and help is insulin. If I don't take it, I die.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
If I don't know the tax codes, so I ask for help from my CPA and I pay the CPA.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to sit there and not file my taxes. I'm going to ask for help.
Right.
So and on and on and on. If I have a problem with my partner, I'll get a therapist. On and on. There's no, it's almost like you have to reverse a lot of things and go tipsy turvy or whatever the word is
Yes.
to make things work. So instead of having kids saying, well, no, I don't ask for help. That's sort of my thing. I don't ask for help. You want to turn them into almost asking for help too much.
Right. Right.
You're,
And
you know,
it really
reversing.
was. It really was. But I like what you're saying. You're giving like examples of how we've had to do that in our own lives. That, our kids see us thinking that we've never had troubles or we never had
Right.
to, hire somebody or get some help in doing something. And so to continue that story, I backed off because obviously there were progress reports. I had to let the coaches influence him and not just be the mom nag. You know what I mean? I knew he didn't want to suit Friday night, not get a steal on you, right?
Right.
So I let him go a couple weeks, and then I saw that he was doing better. there, on the progress report. So I said, how's everything going? Have you had an opportunity to meet with your teacher? And he said, yeah. And I said, it was helpful. And he said, yeah, it is. But I still wait till somebody else comes and walk in with them. That's how shy and reserved he was. He wouldn't go in on his own. Now I think he's growing to that now, but at that time he would wait till someone else came and just kind of walk in with them. Whatever it takes, I guess, you know what I mean? But the bottom line is he did it because he wanted to play. And if he wants to play, there's the reward there, right? It wasn't what I was giving him. It was like he did not want to suit one more Friday and stand and watch the team play and not set one foot on that field, right? So it is the village. It's getting involved. And I share that with parents when I'm coaching is we need to rely on coaches and others to be able to take interest and find value in that child. So when the coach comes and says, Shinny, what's going on with XYZ class? I need you out here Friday night. What do we need to do to help you? We've got U of M, students coming in doing tutoring at school. Maybe you need to sit with them for a little while. And then it was a collective thing that gave him value, that it's okay, and that we're willing to work with you. So the different personalities are going to respond to that in different ways. Kyle kind of pushed back and wanted to do it on his own. And I'm telling you, he was that way for a very long time. I think now he's in his 30s and he's starting to communicate more with me and running things past me because he says, I don't want to be an asshole, Mom. What should I do? Well, I'm glad you called. Let's talk about this. What do you think you should do? But I mean, he wouldn't do that before. He was like the bulldozer, man. He was just like plowing through and there was like carnage everywhere. So when you talked about the trust but verify, I know you mentioned that a little earlier. What does that really look like? I mean, can you, and how can parents balance giving that freedom? Because that's the hardest part I have found with coaching my clients. And I'm not working with all clients that are neurodiverse like your clients are, but to allow them that freedom, but still holding them accountable. So can you give an example of a task or something in which, one of your families had to use a trust but verify method?
Oh yeah, there's a ton of examples. Everything when you're talking about executive function, everything that has to do with organization can be trusted and but verified. So, for example, if I'm taking on a new college student at the very beginning of the semester, I make sure that he or she sends me all of the syllabi, and then the next goal is within a week or two maximum. Everything on each syllabus is inputted into Google Calendar so that they don't have to keep opening up the syllabus to page 23 and say, oh, wait, oh my God, big exam worth 40 points. It's all in Google Calendar. And so to your point about what can parents do, they can say, show me your Google Calendar. Right. Everybody who I coach is supposed to text me every day with their plan for the day. We take it one day at a time. They can say, show me the text to Jared. And they can assess whether or not it's a useful text or sort of a BS text. A BS text is sort of saying something like, I'm having steak for dinner. I don't care about that.
That's right.
I care about, are they ready for their Spanish quiz or the English essay or their huge exam in calculus? And so the trusting but verify, it can be, across the map. But it's got to be just sort of quick. And then you're in and you're out. Yeah. Just like the same thing with the contract, you're in and you're out. You're not, there shouldn't be a lot of negotiation or fighting or anything because it's already been established. And the same thing with, the family contract sometimes set up the expectations. Yes, you are texting Jared every day. It takes 5 seconds. What's the big deal? Just do it, and then if you don't do it, something might happen. If you do it, you might get those 3 cheeseburgers. Who knows? But the thing is, we're not, a lot of families come, a lot of moms come in and say, well, how do I know that my kid will buy in? Right. And the answer is we don't know, but we're going to do whatever it takes to try to get him to buy in. And I might need your help on this, Mom. Right. I might need your help too. Right.
That's really where it is, that partnership with the family and holding the child,
Yeah. Set it and forget it doesn't work.
No. I agree. I agree. And following up and then if it's not accomplishing why?
Yeah, but you could be, but the parent who is overly, let's just say, emotionally involved in some cases, which is totally understandable. Everyone gets that way, but they can start to moderate or modulate, their emotional reactions to the point where they can get to saying, look, you didn't do it. Here's the contract, so no cheeseburgers,
right.
And walk away. Sometimes it means walking away from that room so they can't, that your kid can't sort of pursue you and say, oh, it's not fair. What's going on? And, all that stuff, it's sometimes when when a kid is very oppositional, and this is coming up more and more like PDA and everything, sometimes after, if the parents are in agreement and then they lay down the law about something semi-important that has not been being done up till that point, sometimes I tell them, lay it out, get the contract signed or whatever, and then both of you, mom and dad, the parents, you go out to dinner by yourselves. Okay. And because then they don't even have to witness or be affected by whether or not the kid is screaming or not in the house.
Right.
Okay. Now, obviously, if the kid has any history of self danger or anything, you can't do that. But if there's not any history, you can do it, and it works. Is the bigger point? It's almost like you do your bit. You take care of business on just this one thing we're talking about, like mandating one thing that happens in the house or something over the weekend or every week or whatever, and then leave the house and then return in an hour and a half. And, it's a way to, it's a coping mechanism to get to the point of, the DISC personality profiles and stuff. Sometimes parents, especially cautious ones, I think you'd agree might have trouble being firm.
Yes.
They might, and so you have a mom who might be walking around their dominant ADHD 18-year-old athletic boy, and they are pissed off internally. They're angry. Things aren't getting done. They're upset. They can't believe it. They're a little shocked, right? And then, and so if you're coaching them, you can say some things that make sense according to this profile. Like when you talk to them, you cannot order them around. You cannot tell them what to do. You have to give them time to process whatever you're saying and why you're saying it, and the why is important too. And but at the end, what you must do is stay firm. You can't walk away with nothing.
No, absolutely. And that's why the data that we use from the assessments is so powerful, because it's not just what we're saying. The proof is in the data, right?
Yeah,
so this is a
right.
research-based best practice approach because of what we discovered through the personality assessments, which is the first thing that we do. And
Right.
although Kyle was not ever diagnosed as neurodiverse, there were many overlapping traits. But Jared,
Yes.
when I read his personality assessment, this is how God wired him. It was the blend of his dominant and cautious, very left brain. His way was the right way, okay? And he did not necessarily want to yield to what other people had to say, and he would go down that path of it not working and still try to make it work until it really didn't work. I will tell you, he has
Yep.
lost many jobs. He was not doing
Yep.
well in school. And
Yep.
I had to take the empathetic approach and allow him, give him guidance of what I would recommend or have you considered or would you think about. I couldn't tell him what to do, like you said, did not take directives.
Right.
And then when he didn't, he might come back around. But the hardest part for me was watching him go to the edge of the cliff, knowing that this is not going to work out well for him. It wasn't. But I had to let him experience that. And it was difficult to the point where this is where I am now. We have a great relationship today. That was the most important thing. Did he have to learn along the way? I could try to control him and he would hate me. He would excommunicate from me. He would never want to talk to me again because every time he came into me, I'd be trying to tell him what to do. Now I just ask questions. I take the curiosity approach and ask him different things and then probe and ask him a little bit more so I can understand the thought process behind why he's thinking and doing what he's doing, because it's not the way I am, because it's not. Although, I gave birth to these kids and I thought they should think and act like me. They all look like, you know what I mean? Like, what is happening? But it is not the same. And that was the thing about parenting that was just so, opened my mind to the diversity that we have out of the gene pool, that it is not going to be a one size fits all approach.
Yeah.
And I did need to take different approaches to things. And so in helping kids rewire those limiting narratives. So if they really have them, I can't do it, or I'm not good enough. How do you guide parents, or even when you're working with the students, to enforce this daily, that they do have what it takes without overstepping or rescuing them? What is your approach in helping them with those limited narratives that hold them back?
No, well, that's not so hard because all you do is show them the data, and the data in this case would be, for example, an assignment that they did well on. or when they were practicing writing with me, which I do with many kids using answer, cite, explain, or fixed strategies. I at the end of the rainbow there, I can say, no, you just wrote a really good paragraph. You know, how and then what could someone say? Oh no, I didn't. No, you did. So so it's not that or you can point to other examples of previous success and so they can't say this is like a pattern or something. No, you've succeeded at many different junctures of your life. I know this because I read your neuropsych evaluation, and this could be a bump in the road, but you are capable. And that's sometimes what everyone has to do. It doesn't matter whether you're neurotypical, neurodivergent, or whatever. The best CEOs are not the ones that yell. It used to be the CEOs would say, I don't get heart attacks, I give heart attacks, right? That's what they used to say. They don't say that anymore. There's a reason why. It doesn't work, right? And so now the best CEOs, and I've researched this, and I've also interviewed many of them, they say things like they'll have the same person come in who's not performing or is missing something or missing link or has some maybe resistance to change or something or growth or even living up to his job profile. And the CEO, instead of saying the heart attack thing, which is ridiculous, sort of, macho, definitely, but ridiculous, as the CEO gets close to him, he goes, I know you can do this. I really do. You weren't hired for you. It wasn't a mistake hire. Right. You can do it,
And it's having that person of influence, not control, that those words mean something. And I talk a lot about that in some of the teachings that I do, the difference between influence and control. And when you are able to influence someone, it's because you have a strong relationship. So you have a higher level of respect, which means you'll have a lower level of defensiveness.
That's right.
When someone is feeling controlled, and I think in our life, because you and I've got a few decades behind us, we've had people who tried to control us. And when you are in an environment or relationship where you are trying to be controlled, we have a higher level of defensiveness because we have a lower level of trust.
That's true.
So it is so important to build that relationship first, that I got your back. And that's what you're saying with those CEOs when they say, I believe in you. I remember one example. Now, of course, my daughter Anna is more of the supportive, so she's more on the reserve. So that would be considered sometimes more ADD than ADHD is more hyperactive. The other one just it has a little different. It shows up differently. But anyway, we were out skiing, and she was little at the time, and we came over a ridge and got to this top of the ridge, and I looked at that slope and said, shit. I didn't want her to see my face, but I knew this was going to be challenging for her. And she got to the top and she says, I can't do this. And I said, yes, you can. And she says, Mom, I can't do this. And I said, yes, you can. I said, if you think you can, you will. If you think you can't, you won't. So right now we need to keep saying, I can do this. I can do this. Yep. If you think you can, you will. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to stay in my tracks, because I was going to traverse because it was pretty steep. So I'm going to traverse. You stay in my tracks.
Right.
And we're going to get down this hill together. And so she's behind me, and all I hear is saying, I can do this. I can do this. Like I can hear her just saying in her head, but she tried to say it over in her head, because as soon as she would take her mind off or feel as though there was a bump where I couldn't, she'd be down. She'd be down. We got to the bottom of the hill and looked up, and I said, do you believe you just did that?
Yeah, you
did.
So
that's that confidence builder, when they believe that they have what it takes to achieve, even when they didn't believe in themselves.
Yeah, and by the way, the neuroscience supports all that you just said. That the person who says, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, they do, not only do they do it more often, but they feel better, they look better, they make more money down the line. It's all related.
Yeah. It's a mindset, right?
It's a mindset, but it's a mindset that is research backed and also works. So those are two good things. And the other thing is that what you're absolutely right about the respect thing or the trust thing. But ultimately, what we're trying to do, the general theme, and every parent will agree to this when I'm talking to them, is moving the kid or anyone from less codependence and greater independence in every area. And that's our challenge, all of us, until we die, really. There's some things I'm not independent about, and I could be more. I could learn more about something. I know many things, right? But how do you get the trust and respect? You create a safe and fun and engaging and entertaining atmosphere that is completely non-judgmental, so that so that they can't say, oh, what's he going to think of this, or what's he going to say, or is my mom going to find out, or whatever. It's none of that. It's more along the lines of what some of our colleagues preach, which is we're looking for ways on how to celebrate this person instead of how we might be perceived by some others who don't really know what they're talking about, like, oh yeah, he's really tough, or he's very direct, or whatever, like it's a bad thing. No, maybe it gets results, right? But all along we're celebrating the kid. We're like, I'm never overly serious on any coaching call because it doesn't work. Why? Because the neurodivergent personality, they start to trail off. Their brain goes elsewhere. Sometimes if I even see a kid thinking about, like, looking a little bit sideways to the left or the right, I'm like, are you with me? Look right at me, right at me, right at me, right. I'm right here, or sometimes I'll take a bat out and say, come on, just throw me a pitch, because, the neurodivergents, not all, but in most or a lot, they get diverted by the shiny apple in the corner of the room.
Yeah.
So either take the shiny apple away, or figure out another way to actually focus, and they can do it.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like the same thing when I had a Harvard senior math major last year, and this is where the texting is so crucial, and the daily texting is, he texted me on a Wednesday, Jared, I just spent 5 hours in the library preparing for the exam. I'm ready to roll. I wrote back, great. On Friday, he writes, I got an F. I said, on the text, I said, don't worry, we're talking on Monday at 6 p.m. and we'll talk through the whole situation. Right. When we get on the FaceTime at 6 p.m. on Monday, I said, hey, it's just a couple things we got to figure out. In other words, I sort of downplay it instead of the normal parental response is, what on earth were you thinking? Right. Or what on earth happened? This is awful. Right. Like sort of catastrophe. Right. I don't do that. So I just say, either you went to the library, but you had your phone on the whole time, or you went to the library, but you only studied for 1 hour and you sort of fibbed on the text, or you didn't go to the office hours, which we discussed that you go to prior to the exam, or, and many kids do this, and many neurodivergents do, or you did the problems you understood and the equations you understood really well, and you avoided the other half that you didn't, and then somehow you went into the exam expecting to get a good grade. Right. So I said, which one is it? And the kid said, a little bit of all of them, actually, So then the appropriate coaching response there is, well, now we know what not to do next time.
Exactly.
Again, moving forward, it's it's not, and then of course, when the next big exam comes around for that kid, we're all vigilant. And we're all on the lookout. And to your point about trust and verify, I might have him take a picture of him right in the class talking to the professor. That's trust and verify. Or having evidence of logging in to talk to the professor, or even reaching out to the professor. I mean, there are a lot of ways to trust and verify, and a lot of moms especially love it, actually. And then you just have... but you just have to explain to a lot of the kids, like, that's baloney. I'm not going to get micromanaged. I don't need to send you pictures or whatever. And the answer there is, yes, you do, but it's not going to be forever.
Exactly. It's just for now until it becomes a habit. And I love that whole scenario of you listing what the potentials could be and letting them come back and telling you what that was. That whole question and being curious and inquiring rather than telling them, well, you obviously weren't focused, and that's what parents may tend to do. And one of the strategies that I use when it comes to problem solving is when the child does have a problem or they fail to test, and we talked about this a little earlier, would first to be having an empathetic response rather than a judgmental response. And empathy would be like, dang, bummer. Oh my, wow, bless your heart. You know what I mean? Like just something that acknowledges. And the second step to that is, what are you going to do? With the empathy, because I already know what they should have done and what they should do. So I know I want to tell them, but that's not the approach.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? And in most cases, the kids will say, I don't know, because they don't want to dig, like you said, the data mining of all the different things that could have been. And then they say they don't know. And then I ask permission to share.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? And when they say yes, they're ready to receive. Now,
that's right. Yeah.
Kyle would say no.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Then I'd
Right.
have to go to step 5 and say, I'm sure you'll figure it out. Let me know how it goes. Now, my personality is I want to know what he's thinking. I want to know what he's going to do. I want to
Right.
know. But that doesn't work with him. So I
Right.
have to do what? I have to give it back to him. Now,
Hmm.
Kyle's personality may come back to me later and say, well, what do you got?
Yeah.
Now he's
Right.
ready to receive. Where
Right.
most students will be,
Right.
can I make a couple of suggestions? And they'll say, okay. Then you can list off a couple of things. It could have been this. Is this a possibility? Or is this a possibility? Is this a possibility? Now we're communicating and collaborating, not accusing and or
Hmm.
judging and criticizing. Now we can put together. So what do you think you might need to do differently next time? Now we put together a different plan. Now that's the communication and collaboration and coaching where this is why it's so powerful what you're doing, Jared. Not only working with the student, but teaching the parents of the student these approaches so it's consistent, not in working with you, but in the home, all of this
Hmm.
is consistent. Because
Hmm.
many times I'm sure what you're doing with that with the client can be easily undone within 60 minutes
Hmm.
of getting
Yeah.
off the phone call if the parents aren't aware of the approaches they need to take to support what you're doing,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to backing off, working together, and problem solving, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the things that we really want to.
But to your point about empathy, sometimes kids will describe situations that really are not good and are beyond their control,
Right.
and then they'll say something like, "It really sucks." And sometimes the best thing you can say is, "That does suck. That
Yes.
does
Yeah,
suck.
it does. Bummer. Yeah,
Sucks."
absolutely.
And then you move into a quick coaching lesson about that this is going to happen again and again.
Yeah.
You're going to have difficult people or incompetent people in your life, whether it's your employer or a colleague or something. And so there are other things that will suck, and we have to figure out a way to get around the sucking.
Right. And
You
once
know,
we teach them the solutions, then there are things that they can reflect back on and say, this worked before, it can probably work again. And it's and again, teaching the habits, right? The patterns and the habits. Eric, my middle boy, was just very active. So he was
hmm.
very, very fast paced, he was very relational, and he didn't write things down, Jerry. Okay.
Hmm.
So
Right, right.
I mean, I don't think it was neurodiverse, but I mean, you can see that's just one
Yeah,
of those things, right?
yeah,
He
yeah.
did, he
That's
didn't want to do it, and
right,
so he was missing assignments. We couldn't find assignments. Now
right,
he had assignment books, which I think everyone's using calendars now, but this is back up, feels like
right.
100 years ago, where he had a planner but never used the planner. And so my goal with him, because he was conscientious, wanted to do well, but just wasn't organized, rather than say, why can't you be organized like Kyle wrote it down, just wouldn't do it. But I mean, Eric didn't want to disappoint, but every day when he got in the car, when I picked him up, I needed to see the planner, I needed to see the subject,
Yeah,
I needed to know what he did. If it was
right,
done, it was checked off. If it wasn't, it needed to be in the red homework folder. We had to set up
right,
a system, and if it wasn't done that way, he didn't get game time that day.
right, right. That's good.
And then
That's
he'd be
good.
like, oh, wait. And he's writing it down in the car. I'm like, we'll try
Yeah,
again tomorrow. Because
right. Try
everything
again
needs to be
tomorrow.
done in the classroom. And then when we look at it, we see what's done, great, what isn't, should be in the folder. Because I needed to teach him what that looked like. And
Hmm.
it took a month or even 6 weeks where, like, we had a few days that were good. And then another day we'd have a hiccup until it became, he got in the car, showed me what it was. We were good to go because we needed to develop that pattern and strategy of what it was going to take to be successful. Because he was a conscientious kid, he just was more excited that, I want to talk to my friends before my mom comes out. So let me slam the locker and go talk, but
Hmm.
not
Yeah,
structure and organize. And that
right.
was going to crush him when he got to high school and college if he
Yeah.
wasn't writing things down. So it is being able to teach those things. So this was such a great conversation. I hope that our audience really, got some value out of this. But I just want to do a quick recap. So if a parent wants to stop rescuing their child, real quick, what's one thing that they can do today?
Trust and verify.
Trust and verify. Okay. What's a small phrase or habit that helps kids rewrite in their mind that I can't do it to I can do it?
The phrase, "You can do it.
You can do it. All
You can
right.
do it.
All right.
I know you
So,
can."
what's one mistake that parents make when trying to empower instead of enable?
It's power instead of enable. I can't think of too many mistakes because we're always working on the non-enabling part.
Yeah.
Um, but an example of disempowering, which is related, is, for example, We have this is one family I'm coaching, and there's 4 kids. I'm coaching the eldest kid, and he's also the only one who's neurodivergent, and he's got 3 little siblings, so he gets a lot more attention, negative or positive. It's just a lot more. But what happens, or did happen in this family, is that they would start to disempower him by lightening his load, like with the
Mhm.
chores and stuff.
Right.
So to give you a very concrete example, everyone had a task to do after dinner, and then this client would always conveniently go to the bathroom when it was his time to clear his portion of the table, right? He would just say, "I got to go pee," and who's going to say no? You can't. Mom can't say no. You don't. I mean, she could, but it's very rare. So then what happened is he would go and he'd spend a lot of time peeing, right? Because they're playing with their iPhone stuff. I saw this with my own son or other people. They sort of get lost in the vortex, and then they come back out, and then guess what? The whole table's cleared, including his portion. That's a good example of sort of getting in the way. And in this particular example, I asked the kid after I learned of this, after we already had established this shouldn't be going on anymore. I said, "Do you have a problem taking care of your portion of the table every night, as has already been discussed?" He goes, "No. In fact, I'm sort of pissed off on my mom for clearing it for me." So you can see, it goes both ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, in the worst case scenario, if she or the dad cleared it, you might be saying, "You can't handle this, so we'll just take care of it for you."
That's the message. That's what he was saying. That's what he was saying. And that's how he was believing that they don't think I can handle it. So they do it for
Well,
me.
the kid could even say, my parents aren't even giving me a shot at improving.
Right.
you know, and
Right.
they have a point, unless they're manipulating the situation, but they have a point. The one thing that we haven't really addressed, that's very specific to neurodivergence, and this is just a huge challenge, and sometimes it's comical, sometimes it's sad, but they do have a lot of them have some sort of delusions, or the desire to be so stubborn to fight back no matter what the consequence is. And so I've been coaching one kid for a while now, and I pointed out many times when he's being completely irrational.
Mhm.
Like nothing he says is making sense. There is no logical sequence. There's no like, well, if I do this at point A, I'll get point B. There's nothing there. And so I say, you realize you're being really irrational. And I'm thinking nobody wants to be irrational. He goes, I'm good with that. I'm okay with being irrational. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. Right. He's sort of self-defining himself in a way that's not going to serve his interest well, but he's sort of good with that self-definition at that moment. And then but now the same kid wants to be an entrepreneur, and that already shows entrepreneurial talents. So then you can pivot it quickly and say, I don't know many successful entrepreneurs that are irrational. They have to be very rational, and they have to be organized, and they have to have logic, and they have to watch their money, and da 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 like that. So then the kid won't be able to say much. I mean, if you talk about all the CEOs that we know about that everyone talks about, whether it's Bezos or just Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or whatever, they may not be great people or whatever, but they are usually pretty rational, and they are thinking through their business strategy, their execution, profits, losses, revenue, etc. So for a kid to say, for an entrepreneurial kid to say, well, I'm all right with being irrational, you can be like, well, then you're not going to be a really good entrepreneur, I don't think. You know, like,
He's
and
using that to define him. He's
that's
using that
that
to define him being
yeah,
irrational.
yeah, and being sort of proud of it, which is a little
Yes.
perverse, but it happens a lot. That's the problem. And then the other problem is that they sometimes the same population, they don't see the end result, because of the time blindness. So, like, if you say, "Do you realize if you keep going this way, like being irrational, you're not going to make the money you say you want to make, or you're not getting hired by that company, or you're not even getting into that business school, right?" They don't always see that until you point it out to them. That's why most of these people need to know the why. Why am I doing this? Why are you asking this question? Why is it important? Why does my mom keep bugging me about this? Why is the teacher so difficult or hard on me? There usually are reasons, but you have to explain the why.
And they need to buy into the why.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
they don't care. Yes,
Yeah.
very, very true. Very, very true. That it needs to be their why, not just the why. Their why. And
Yeah.
being able to sell it to them in that way that they believe that that this is necessary. It's required. The or and
Well, you wouldn't believe how many times parents try to sort of change the monikers or names of things just to make it more palatable to the kid. So, like, I had a client a long time ago who, the kid didn't like ADHD coach, and so we changed that. And somebody else was coaching this kid on my team, and then as she got older, 11th grade, 12th grade, she didn't like that at all. So the mom switched it to college coach, and that seemed to make it a big difference. Like, okay,
love
now
that.
that's cool. You know,
I love that. Yep. Or even the executive functioning. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So I really that's huge. Because
Or
the
or
child
you
may
go
not
from
want to
or
stay in that label. They
yeah,
want to
yeah.
be able to
Or
learn.
you go for executive functioning coach, which a lot of people don't understand or don't like, whatever, to life coach, mentor, modeler,
Right.
or whatever. Something that and it's not difficult. The best kind of coaching, I'll be honest, is not just all the stuff we talked about, but the ability to tell stories well.
Right.
The stories, because that's what usually kids or young people or anybody perks up if you tell a really good joke, a really good story.
Absolutely. Tell a story, make a point. Tell a story, make a point. And
Yeah,
that's where people start to see the reality of
yeah,
this
and
story.
parents could do more of that too.
Yeah, well, and there were times where I finally had to get to that place with my kids, that I had to share my ugly too, and my
Yeah,
failures and the things that I had to learn because I thought my way was the right way and this is how it ended up. So
right,
if
right,
I'd have known better, and you can choose to do your way, but I'm just saying this is what happened to me, and if you can
right.
learn from my mistake, then I'm willing to support you in that as well. Jared, this is always a great conversation when we get
It
together.
is. It
So
is.
many families that love their kids. They want them to be successful, but also find that they fall into that helicopter parenting where they are doing too many things that the child can do on their own. And I always say, start young and start with little things and those expectations. Even if it's little chores around the house, emptying the weight baskets when
Hmm.
putting silverware away after the
Hmm.
dishwasher done, just building them in that this is just what they do, and they're building their confidence that they're capable. But when we spend all the time enabling because of their label or their situation, and we don't give them those shots to do it but do it wrong and coach them into doing it right, we are stealing away opportunities for them to believe that they have what it takes to succeed in anything, even the little things.
Yeah, and what you just said can be encapsulated by the phrase, "It's simple, but it's not easy."
Right.
It's very simple to write a contract, put it on the refrigerator. It's just
Right.
not easy. It's
To
not easy to
implement,
enforce.
to
Yeah,
follow
to
through,
implement,
right?
to
Yeah,
execute.
and for parents, and I've experienced the same thing for whatever reason, that they are fearful of following through on
Yeah.
what that's going to look like, fearful of how the child will respond, fearful because it feels uncomfortable,
Hmm.
especially for the supportive personalities, because they don't want the conflict, so they'll avoid it. And but nothing's going to change. That's the insanity we talked about. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right.
When we're working with clients, it's hard for them to budge off of what they used to do. But what you did got you here. But what you're doing here is not going to get you where you want to be. So
Right.
change is hard. And I clarify, it's going to feel, I'm going to ask you to do some things that are going to feel uncomfortable.
Right.
I know
Right.
I am. And so, but that's where change is going to come in. So if you trust me and trust the process, we're going to make this happen. And
Yeah, trusting is pretty important. And to your point about, I know at the end, but the point is that a lot of parents, or anyone might, if you introduce a new method or a new approach,
yeah,
they might caveat it by saying, "I'll do it so long as it's not too punitive." They'll
right,
say something like that, and yet nothing's been working.
right,
So then you have to start talking about, like, what does this really mean? Like, how hurt is this person going to be
yeah,
if we implement this one simple thing?
yeah.
And the answer usually is not that. It's not that bad.
No, but they fear it will be.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to set the boundaries, it's another thing to follow through. It's one thing to write
Yeah.
the contract, it's another thing to follow through what's in the contract. And if you're
Right.
not willing to follow through what's in the contract, then nothing's going to change.
It's one thing to say you're going to leave your kids' plates on the table. It's another thing to not remove them and put them in the dishwasher as
and
he's
and
peeing.
and leave them in the sink because they
Yeah.
still haven't cleaned up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
nothing would burn me more than
Yeah.
coming down in the morning and having all their snack stuff, and I want to get
Oh
my
no.
coffee and I'm smelling their garbage, and I'm telling
Oh,
you, this one mama would be like,
Oh my God.
I'm a banging on the doors, right? You know,
So afraid of you,
heck,
Karen.
guys, come on! I didn't leave this kitchen this way. Oh, I'm telling you, I was not a rational mom at that point.
I am so afraid of you. You have so much power.
Between my personality and my Italian heritage, it was just like a
Oh
ready to
boy.
happen, right? So, Jared, this was wonderful. So, if we have listeners right now that are
Yeah.
struggling with trying to come up with systems and processes to work with their neurodivergent child, what is the next best step to get in touch with you and learn more about what you do and how you can support them?
Oh, just the website's actionpackcoaching.com. The email is Jared at actionpackcoaching.com. Pact is PACT, which means agreement, of course. And or my phone number 202-880-5134, because the way the process always starts is mom usually calls me and we talk about the situation for a long time.
Okay.
That's the first thing.
Okay. So the best thing is to contact you, jump on a call, discuss the
Yeah, we're going to jump on a
situation,
call
and make
first
sure you're
because
fit.
and the reason is because every kid and every family is different. So you can't just, there's no cookie cutter answer to anything.
Right, right, right. And
Ever.
what I love about what you're doing now, which is why we started working together,
Yeah.
is having the success that you can get with the child, but being able to support the family to
Hmm.
understand why you're doing what you're doing to get the results they want with their child.
Hmm.
And so, using the research-based data of the parenting blueprint to understand the family dynamics, why the parents the way they do, why they have such expectations, and it's not right or wrong, it's different. But the
Yep.
goal is to become aware of that, adapt, and apply the right strategies to get
Yep.
the outcomes that we're looking for. And so, what you've put together in your framework and your methods is just remarkable. So, I'm just so excited to
Thank you.
have
Appreciate
you
it.
on our team. So, this was great. All right, so I'm going to
All
be
right.
posting the information for Jared below this.
Excellent.
Below this recording, so you can reach out to Jared. Is incredible. You'll get some amazing results in working with him. So click that link and connect with Jared. Jared,
Fly,
thanks
Eagles,
again.
fly. Fly, Eagles, fly.
All right. Can you tell he's a Philly boy, right? All
Yeah.
right. Love it, Jared.
All
Thanks so
right. Take
much. See
care.
y'all next time
Okay.
when we'll
Bye.
talk to the parenting
All right.
blueprint
Bye.
coaches. Take care. Bye.
All right.